Hello friends, I'm Eric Hutchinson. I'm the principal broker and owner of Hutchinson Realty. Welcome to video 16 of my video series, How to Buy a Home in Northwest Arkansas. We have talked about a lot of interesting topics and today is no different. This is my very last video in the video series and I hope you'll go back and watch the other videos in the series because if you are a buyer, it can really help you in negotiating your next home. If you are a seller, it can help you to decipher some of the terms on the Arkansas real estate contract so you know how to either accept or counter these terms. Today, we're going to be talking about digital signatures. Are digital signatures even legal in Arkansas? We're also going to be talking about what happens when a realtor is the buyer or a realtor is the seller. Does that make any difference? Does it impact our real estate contract at all? What happens whenever the seller signs the contract after the expiration date? Each contract has an expiration date. What happens if the buyer or the seller doesn't meet that expiration date? We're going to be talking about the ramifications of that. We're also going to be talking about the legalities of this Arkansas real estate contract. Do you need a lawyer to sign off on the real estate contract? We're also going to be talking about how the seller responds if they're not happy with some of the items on the contract. Maybe the seller just wants to reject the contract. How do they do that? What happens if the property that the seller is selling is already under contract and this real estate contract is a backup offer? How does that work? Some interesting topics, so let's get into it, shall we? We're going to start on page 11 of the Arkansas real estate contract. Item number 33 is called counterparts, and it basically is dealing with digital signatures. Digital signatures are legal in the state of Arkansas, and that basically means that a buyer can sign in one location and then the buyer's spouse can sign in a different location. Same thing for the seller. Maybe the husband's at work and the wife is at home or vice versa. They can sign in different locations digitally, and the real estate contract is still considered valid if they are signing digitally. So that's really important. Now 34 is an interesting paragraph. I don't want to spend too much time on it. It's called the FERPTA, compliance tax reporting. And what that refers to is if the person that is the buyer is not a United States citizen. Now you probably are not going to run into this very often, but every now and then you can get someone from a different country that wants to buy property over here, and this deals with the tax ramification of that if it happens. So we're going to move to item number 35, which talks about licensee disclosure. If the real estate agent is also the buyer or the seller, they have to disclose this to the other party. Let's say the realtor is the buyer. He has to disclose to the seller that he has an active Arkansas real estate license. Why do they need to disclose? Because realtors do multiple transactions every year, and that gives them more knowledge than the average person, and that has to be disclosed because the realtor could take advantage of that knowledge. Item number 36 is an important item. It is the expiration date on this contract. When does it expire? So the buyer says, hey, I'm making this offer to you and it expires at 8:00 p.m. tonight. If the seller signs the contract at 8:01, is it valid? The answer to that question is no, it is not. If the seller signs after the expiration time period, then the contract is not valid and cannot be upheld by the courts. And so it's really important that the seller signs within the expiration time period. Now, the seller could cross through that and put the time after that, like 8:30 or 9 o'clock, and then the buyer and the seller have to initial that change, or you just redo the contract, or the seller can counter item number 36 and say, hey, the expiration time period was 8:30 instead of 8 o'clock, and as long as the buyer signs the seller's counter, then we're okay. But you've got to meet that expiration time period. It's really important. Let's move over to page 12. At the very, very top of the page up here is something that's in all caps and bolded. And anytime you see that, that means it's really important. This basically says that this is a legally binding contract when signed, and that you are waiving your right to have a lawyer draft this contract. Now, realtors have these contracts, they're already approved by an attorney. The Arkansas Realtor Association has legal counsel that has approved these contracts. However, if you're a buyer and you want legal counsel, do not, I repeat, do not sign this contract, because once you sign it, you have waived your right to have an attorney draft this form. Now, the next portion is the signatures. You can see right here, this is where the buyer and the seller sign. And at the very bottom down here is where, if the seller wants to reject this offer, they check that box, or if they want to counter the offer and change one of the items, then you would put the serial number of the counter offer, and then the counter offer would be presented back to the buyer, and the buyer either agrees or they would reject the seller's counter. Now, if there's already a contract on this property, there's an item down here where it says that the buyer has been notified of an existing contract, and there's an addendum that says how many contracts are in front of this buyer. There may only be one, but there may be two or three, and this would be considered a backup offer. And there's a checkbox down here that the buyer's agent would check, saying we've been notified and we realize this is a backup offer. And all time constraints in this real estate contract do not come into play until this contract is put into first position. There's an addendum that goes with this. I'm not going to cover that, but that's it. That is page 12 of our Arkansas real estate contract. I hope this information has been helpful to you, and I hope that you will use all the videos in this series to help you negotiate your next home, or if you are a seller, in negotiating the items with the buyer. So you can always reach out to me at info@hutchrealty.com. It's December, it's the end of the year, so I wish you a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, and I hope that you'll join me next year as I start this process all over, because every year they make changes to our real estate contract and forms, and I like for you to be informed. No matter what, I wish you the best. May God bless you, and may God bless your home.